Hello and welcome to GameSack. It's time to dare to compare versions of the same game released across multiple platforms. That's right, I've been dared. I don't say dare to compare just because it's a fun rhyme or anything. Anyway, this first game definitely deserves some more love on both the consoles it appeared on. We start with Jackie Chan's Action Kung Fu on the NES from Hudson Soft, released in December of 1990. This is an action platformer that I feel flew under most people's radar. Jackie Chan had yet to achieve mainstream popularity in North America after all. Anyway, Jackie's girl gets kidnapped by some wicked evilness and now you need to rescue her. Naturally, in order to rescue your girlfriend, you need to travel through 5 structured stages littered with many easily defeated enemies. You can punch, crouch kick, and jump kick. There are frogs scattered around the levels and they barf up an item when you attack them. Usually, these are special moves. These can be done by pressing up and attack, though you can only do them a limited amount of time as seen by the number next to the attack in the bottom middle window. You can also do a charge attack by holding down the attack button, but again, this is limited by the number of little balls on the right side of the HUD. As you defeat enemies, you'll often collect green orbs. Once you get enough, they can replenish your charge attacks and even a little bit of your life. Sometimes the frog will even barf out a bowl which is full of his vomit. This will restore some of your life. Yum! Fighting the enemies and getting through the stage hazards requires some quick reflexes if you haven't memorized the layout of everything. After several lengthy scenes, you'll make it to the stage boss. These guys are usually pretty easy to beat if you know where to attack. This cloud stage where you bounce on the clouds can go straight to hell. It's still fun, but man, I hate it. Sometimes there are bells in the stage for you to find. Touching these will take you to a bonus stage. There are several different styles of these and you need to score as much as you can doing the task required. If you score enough points, you can get some health back or even get another continue. You only have 1 life per continue, but thankfully each continue works like a life as you get set back to a checkpoint instead of the beginning of the stage. There are only 5 stages, but again they are pretty lengthy and you might be needing those continues, so try to find those bonus levels. The graphics are pretty good for the NES with nice detail and decent color. There is a bit of flicker on some of the larger enemies, but that's okay. The bosses are usually pretty big as well. The music is awesome, and it has that NES feel, probably because it's an NES game. This one is a lot of fun. Years later, Jackie Chan's Action Kung Fu came out for the TurboGrafx 16 in North America. Believe it or not, this version came out a few days earlier than the Famicom game in Japan. This one is a very similar game with a fairly big step up in its presentation. The game itself plays pretty much the same, but as you can see, the graphics are brighter and much more colorful here. Not only that, but some of the stages see the addition of parallax scrolling, which wasn't common on this console. Can you tell the difference in this exciting side-by-side comparison? If not, you might not be alive. Might want to check that. The sound and music have also been improved. It still sounds like an NES because, well, it's the TurboGrafx, but it sounds nicer overall. There's slightly more instrumentation and the game now runs in stereo. Jackie now makes noises each and every time he attacks. Check it out. Can you hear the difference? If not, you're probably watching it on your phone listening to its built-in speaker or something. Also, Jackie makes a really funny noise when he lands on spikes or lava. I don't know what that sound is supposed to be, but it certainly doesn't sound like he's having a good time. There are more changes here than just graphics and sound though. For example, on the NES, the frog jumps away off screen after he vomits you out a power-up. On the mighty TurboGrafx 16, you need to watch out because if you don't grab it fast enough, the frog will eat it again. You can still knock it back out though. Check out the second half of stage 1 in each game. On the NES, it auto-scrolls and bricks rise up from nowhere for you to jump over. On the TurboGrafx 16, it scrolls like any other stage where you control when you move forward, and there are no rising bricks to worry about. Actually, most of the stages have some slight layout differences. This stage, where you hop across the floating turtle shells, has you jump up towards the next level on the NES. But on the Turbo, it doesn't do that. Instead, a floating shell just takes you up. That's kind of a curious but overall inconsequential change. There's a mini-boss fight here on the Turbo that's not in the NES version right before the Cloud stage. Speaking of the damned Cloud stage, it's in the Turbo version as well, and the premise is the same, but otherwise it's completely different with many more enemies attacking you and lots more movement. It's annoying on both platforms, and if you fall off, both have the giant pink leg that kicks you back to the beginning of the stage. Fun! The layout of the final stage is very similar on both consoles, but the NES version gets much darker when the lights go out, where you can still see some of the bricks on the turbografx. The bonus stages are here, but they're different. The premise is the same though, scoring enough to get extra stuff. The lives and the continue feature work the same way on the turbografx. Overall, both are fantastic games and deserve to be played, but the TurboGrafx 16 version comes out ahead because it has a bit more content, better graphics, and better audio. You'd be crazy to prefer the NES version, but I'm sure that someone does, because of course they do. No worries, it's still an incredible game. Next is an early 32-bit game that is loads of fun. I just wish there were more locations to battle on. Still, it manages to be both addictive and challenging. This is Return Fire from Silent Software on the 3DO, released in 1995. This is basically just a game of capture the flag with a military setting. You first choose which map you want to battle on. In a single-player game, you default to the brown team, and you're trying to capture the green team's flag, which is hidden in one of these buildings. All of the green team's turrets, vehicles, and soldiers will shoot at you. To deal with all of this, you choose a vehicle. Of course, each machine has their own abilities, and you can choose between tank and normal controls for each. The tank is a good one because you can use it to mow down enemy defenses, and it moves at a normal pace. There's the armored vehicle, which is powerful and it can take a lot of damage, but it moves crazy slow. The helicopter can fly, but it can't take much damage, nor is it very powerful. Also, it uses a ton of fuel. Finally, there's the Jeep. This is the only vehicle that can go out and get the flag once it's discovered and bring it back to the base. It can't take any damage though, and if it gets hit, it'll drop the flag where it died and you'll have to bring another Jeep to get it. You have a stock of 3 for each vehicle, 8 for the Jeep. You're not told how many you have remaining unless you go into a menu. You can also restore your ammo and fuel at certain places on the enemy bases. After you get the flag back to your base, they throw a ticker tape parade for you in New York City, which is of course overexposed because that's just how awesome it is. Some of the maps can be really big. In these later levels, it helps to send your helicopters out to try to find a flag because there can be several decoy locations. Once you find it, you send the tanks and the armored vehicles out to clear a path for your Jeep. The graphics are decent for their time, but they can get pretty choppy, though we weren't bothered too much by it back then because there weren't any graphics like this which had preceded it. The music is all public domain stuff and it's outstanding. However, the performances are copyrighted, so I can't let you listen to very much of it. It sounds great though, even though it's not Redbook audio. In 1996, Return Fire came to the PlayStation. The gameplay is basically the same, but of course there are some differences. For one, this one has way more maps. Some of them are absolutely crazy. You don't need to buy an expansion disc for this one like you did with the 3DO. Next, as you can see, it shows that you've completed a map and the time it took you to beat it, whereas on the 3DO, you have no clue. Okay, on to the game itself now. The first thing you'll notice is that you can now see how many vehicles you have left. Very helpful. The Jeep is now a Humvee because, well, who knows, but it is. The frame rate is so much better in this version. It can still get a bit choppy sometimes, but it always runs much better than the 3DO game. This is very much appreciated. You can now move the camera in and out with one set of the shoulder buttons and also remove the HUD and play in full screen mode if you want. The PlayStation version is also a tad darker, but you're not going to notice this unless you put them side by side. When you select a map, you get some Mode 7-like scaling and rotation, whereas on the 3DO the guy just descends into the bunker. Other than a little texture warping, the graphics seem mostly the same compared to the 3DO. The music is the same stuff and now Redbook audio, but it can now sometimes start at different points in the song compared to always starting at the beginning. Oh, and now we have a Lou Gehrig FMV instead of the ticker tape parade.
On the face of the earth.
There's also the PC version, which came out in 1996. That's right, I'm covering a PC game. I had a hard time getting this one to run. Windows XP hated it. So I tried Windows 7 and it also thought it was NT. Then I tried that super fancy compatibility mode. The game wants Windows 95 and 256 colors, no more. After having a brief but very concerning seizure, the computer will run the game. It uses the Windows OS itself to choose your maps and things like that. The game seems to be more based on the 3DO version rather than the PlayStation version, which had a few extra amenities. It looks a lot sharper than either version, but the frame rate can still get pretty choppy here. The music and the sound effects are all the same stuff, but it sounds kind of odd, like I'm listening to it from a microphone that's set a few inches away from a loudspeaker. I don't like it. The full motion videos don't play correctly for me, but it sounds like you get the parade and not Lou Gehrig. I'm not sure if you can get rid of the HUD or adjust the camera. I started pressing keys on the keyboard and accidentally exited out of the game. Oops. This one does let you know which maps you've finished and your time though. Sometimes the game will flip out on me, probably due to not actually running Windows 95 proper. Return Fire was in development for, but never released on the Saturn. However, an incomplete version was leaked. It runs at a worse frame rate than the 3DO, like way worse. The music is all in mono and there are other things missing like the ability to save your game, but a password feature is here. The bunker is like the 3DO version in that you have no idea how many vehicles you have left. But it does have some of the PlayStation amenities like playing in full screen and adjusting your camera view. It has a couple of different FMVs when you win, but they look pretty bad. This one runs even worse on an ODE like the Satiator, and the music will be all sorts of wrong. Bottom line, every version of this game is fun. Well, every version that was actually released anyway. But the best version simply has to go to the PlayStation version, which feels the most complete and also has the best frame rate. Up next is another game that started on the 3DO. Well, actually began life on the Genesis, but this version of it started on the 3DO. This is Road Rash on the 3DO from Electronic Arts, which came out in July of 1994. I'd never seen even a single game even remotely like this before. Well, I mean, except for the Genesis games, which were basically just like this. This game is so incredibly a product of the 90s. You ride a motorcycle and of course you want to win the race, but you get to beat up other motorcyclists and cops as well as take beatings from them. If you fall off your bike, you go rolling for a bit or, usually a ways because, momentum and stuff, but then you need to get up and then run back to your bike and resume the race. You can get caught by the cops or your bike can run out of energy, both of which will end the race, making you a loser. Between the races are FMV sequences, which can be quite humorous and really add to the vibe of the game. You can choose your racer, but selecting menu items here is incredibly slow if you're playing from the disc. Installing an optical disc emulator in your console, or ODE, can really help with this. You can schmooze and see colorful character portraits, which can offer some good advice, or they can trash talk you, depending on how you treated them in the last race. You can also buy newer and faster bikes once you get enough money from your winnings. Once you qualify on all 5 tracks, you move up a level, and the tracks get longer and longer. The game also features a licensed soundtrack that plays everywhere but the actual races. This is great stuff, and once again, it really adds to the 90s vibe. It's perfect. The race graphics are great for their time, with a lot more detail than the Genesis games. There's so much going on here. Why are so many people standing in the street? For you to run over, that's why. You can press the the stop button to call up a graphical dashboard, but this can block your motorcycle sometimes and it just looks dumb. Probably why it isn't there by default. The game runs between 12 and 20 frames per second, but at the time we didn't care. It was just amazing to have something like this at home. The in-game music is generated by the console itself, and it's kind of silly. Say what you will, but I love this stuff. Not that I'd listen to it outside of the game or anything. And last but not least, the game is extremely fun. Yes, it's repetitive, but still fun. If the 3DO had games of this quality at launch, maybe the story of the console would have been a little better. But at least we got it. Road Rash was ported first to the Sega CD in March of 1995. This is a demake if there ever was one. The menus here, of course, lose a ton of color and are still quite slow to navigate. Overall, the gist of the game is the same, but if you look closely, you can tell that it doesn't look quite as good. It uses the same graphical engine from the cartridge Road Rash games that preceded this, and it doesn't use the Sega CD's abilities to enhance the visuals in any way. The game runs between 10 and 19 frames per second. The road never widens, narrows, or forks, nor are there any tunnels. However, this is the only version that features multi-layered backgrounds in the distance, and that includes the clouds. The FMVs are here, but man, they are quite grainy. This is also the only version that features the licensed music during the actual gameplay. This changes the vibe of the game a bit, and it also makes the music get old a lot faster. All of the music is also in mono. Hey, what else would you expect from a CD game? In fact, the only noise that's in stereo are the bees. I mean the motorcycle engines. This is also the only version to feature mixing controls for the sound and the music. I really wish the other versions had this. Overall, I can't recommend this one when the other versions exist. Road Rash then came to the PlayStation in December of 1995. This one is exactly like the 3DO version in every way, except for the differences. The menus here are all still very slow. The gameplay itself is the same. The graphics are also mostly the same. The frame rate is ever so slightly better than the 3DO game, running between 15 and 22 frames per second. The scrolling of the background in the distance has a bit of nastiness applied here that no other version has. What's up with that, you stupid PlayStation? Stop doing that. There's no option to have your dash overlay on the screen in this one. That's perfectly okay with me. The FMVs are all here and look a little better than they do on the 3DO and also fill the entire screen. The sound and the music are a little different. The sound effects, particularly the engine noise, is much louder here with no way to adjust it. The race music sounds like the 3DO with some very slight instrument changes like the drums and some reverb added. Weirdly, the bike noises completely disappear in this version when you go through a tunnel. No other version of the game does this. Overall, I definitely prefer the way the 3DO game sounds. Road Rash came to the Saturn a few months later in June of '96. Again, it's very similar to the 3DO game in most respects. The menus are faster than the 3DO and the PlayStation, but still a bit slow. The graphics are pretty much the same, but now move much faster, running between 24 and 30 frames per second. As a result, this version feels slightly better to play. Sadly, most of the improvements end there. First of all, the sides of the buildings which face you are not shaded like they are on the 3DO and the PlayStation. I'm not sure why they couldn't just bake that in, but it does make the city scenes look a bit more flat. The shadows of the sprites and whatnot are now accomplished via dithered mesh. There are also fewer clouds moving in the sky, but it's not that big of a deal. This one also doesn't have the dashboard overlay that the 3DO game does. The FMV is not full screen and it looks even blockier than the 3DO game. What the hell, Saturn? The sound has also taken some hits. The race music sounds completely different even though the tunes are the same, and you can barely even hear it at all, and of course there's no way to adjust the sound mix. On the plus side, the motorcycle engines sound a bit more pleasant in this version, much less like a swarm of bees. Lastly, Road Rash came to the PC in September of '96. That's right, I'm covering another PC game. Just don't go getting used to this. Wow, this sure looks a whole lot better. Can you tell? The game can be run in a variety of resolutions. I'm running everything on max here, which tops out at 640 by 480, twice the resolution of any other version. Well, technically that's 4 times the resolution. You may also notice that it runs a lot smoother. That's right, a full 60 frames per second. So you have quadruple the spatial resolution and more than twice the temporal resolution. That sure makes a huge difference in how clean it looks. Hell, it almost looks too clean. Sadly, the PC just isn't powerful enough to have moving clouds on screen. They're all completely frozen in time. Oddly, this game defaults to a giant dashboard on top of everything. Why? It's hideous! Who would want this? Fortunately, you can get rid of it by pressing F10 on your keyboard. In fact, if you press F10 again, you can get rid of all the HUD elements altogether. The full motion videos look pretty good, but they don't take up the whole screen like the PlayStation version, and there's a lot of screen tearing. The music is general MIDI, and it sounds pretty generic compared to the 3DO and the PlayStation, but it certainly outclasses the Saturn race music. The engines are back to sounding like bees here. All in all, the PlayStation has the best representation of the videos. They're uncropped and full screen, revealing more on the top and the bottom compared to any of the other versions. They also have the best compression, providing the cleanest look. It goes without saying that the Sega CD videos look the worst, but barring that, the Saturn version looks the second worst, but still mostly okay. As for the game itself, it's hard to say that the PC version isn't the best. I mean, just look at the exciting comparison here if your brain can handle so much information on screen at once, paired with a diagonally scrolling concrete background and a bunch of console logos. This is a lot of information here and you don't have much time to look at it all. But if you're a console person like I am, then I've gotta go with the 3DO. It's tough to pick it over the PlayStation, but they're pretty close. A lot of it is probably due to nostalgia, but I do like the sound more on the 3DO. And naturally, the Sega CD version doesn't stand a chance. Okay, I said I was going to do this in the last Dare to Compare episode, so let's do it. This next game is the 4th in a series and also has 4 versions to compare, each substantially different than the other. Check it out. This is Ys 4, Mask of the Sun for the Super Famicom from Tonkin House, released in November of 1993. This action RPG was only released in Japan and I'm playing a fan-translated version because, well, why wouldn't I be? Weirdly, Falcom decided that they didn't want to make the game themselves, so they had other developers do it. Falcom just provided the story and the music. The story takes place between Ys 2 and Ys 3. Tonkin House is the same developer that previously handled Ys 3 on the same console, which we explored in the last Multiplatform Games episode. Anyway, as you have no doubt noticed by now, this one returns to the overhead perspective of the first 2 Ys games. It also retains the highlight bump mechanics for fighting, and this will probably be a deal breaker for a lot of people who just can't get used to this. And this game is probably one of the worst implementations of bump fighting mechanics yet, at least if you ask me. If you hit the enemies head on, you bounce back rapidly. You need to hit them off axis and then you can damage them. The problem is that the enemies will often realign themselves to be centered, and bouncing you will go. Fighting enemies in this particular game right here can be extremely annoying, way more so than any other Ys game I've ever played. Once you level up, get better equipment, and just overall become stronger than the enemies, you can attack them head on, but you won't do as much damage. This is also a very grindy game. You'll want the best equipment that you can get and also be at level 7 or so before you go more than a few screens outside of the first town. Of course, you'll have plenty of battles along the way. You talk to lots of other people and eventually make your way through a dungeon. Of course, you end up in a boss fight. Beat him and it's time to grind again. A lot. Of course, such things are to be expected from a game of this type. The translated version sometimes gets buggy. I'll blame the hack and not the game itself for this. Visually, the game is pretty good with pleasant colors, though the characters and enemies may look too small and wimpy for those lusting for pure 16-bit power. You do get a bit of nice scrolling here and there though. The music is mostly great, though limited a bit by the sound font that the developers chose. The melodies here deserve much better sound quality. Tonkin House did compose a few original tunes for this game which didn't originate from Falcom and they appear nowhere else. Overall, the game can be completed in less than 10 hours, which is longer than Ys 3 was. The next month, the game arrived on the PC Engine Super CD as Ys 4 The Dawn of Ys, again only in Japan. And again, I'm using a translated copy here which also includes English voice, which is pretty cool.
Can you believe you've been gone for 2 years?
The game shares many similarities with the Super Famicom game, such as the main story beats, but Hudson Soft took it upon themselves to add a lot here. And that includes changing the story a little bit here and there. The Super Famicom game, Mask of the Sun, was considered the proper and canon version until 2012, but we'll get to that. Both games take place in the land of Celceta, here it's spelled with an S. Both games start you out in the town of Minia, which is the first town from the first Ys game. However, in the Super Famicom game, Adol gets a message in a bottle which makes him depart for Celceta. And in the PC Engine game, Adol visits the fortune teller from the first game who sends him that way. Both games start you out in the town of Promalok before you can play proper. In the Super Famicom game, you need to buy weapons and armor, but in the PC Engine game, you have the best equipment from the end of Ys 2, though their stats are much lower. Over on the Super Famicom, Karna lives in the Tree Village. But on the PC Engine, she lives in a regular village like a normal person. The Tree Village does show up in the PC Engine game, but you get there much later. One place that the Dawn of Ys really strays is in visiting the areas from the first game again. While the Super Famicom game also returns to the first town and its plains, the situation here is very different. In this game, there aren't any monsters to fight since you saved the land 2 years prior. But then Lilia gets kidnapped and you're forced to go through Darm Tower again. Fortunately, it's not as convoluted as Darm Tower in Ys 1 was. But this is the only version of the game that has this Darm Tower sequence. I'm not going to go over every minor difference in the story because you get the idea. Both games have bosses and they are different here on the PC Engine. At some points, Karna accompanies you and helps you in battle. Be careful because you don't get the experience or gold for enemies that she kills. This version is longer overall than the Super Famicom version, but it's still not much over 10 or 12 hours or so. What's really nice is that now Adol can move and attack diagonally where he's limited to only 4 directions in Mask of the Sun. The combat here is just like Ys 1 and 2 on the same console, other than the new diagonal movement. It feels much better and far less annoying than Mask of the Sun. Strangely, you have 5 save slots on the Super Famicom compared to 15 on the PC Engine CD, which is backwards from how the Ys 3 games were on these same 2 consoles. As you can see, the PC Engine version absolutely trounces the Super Famicom game when it comes to the graphics. Way more detail and better in bolder color. Even the frame around the action looks better. The Super Famicom has more areas with parallax scrolling, but it shows up occasionally on the PC Engine. And suffice it to say that, since it's a CD game, the PC Engine has tons more cutscenes and they all look fantastic. The game as a whole is generally way more epic. The music is largely the same melodies between the 2 games, though often used in different spots. For this game, it was arranged by Ryo Yomenitsu. As you can imagine, it sounds a ton better on the PC Engine Super CD. Not all of the tunes are CD quality though, some are PSG, and even those sound very pleasant compared to the Super Famicom game. As far as the versions that were released in the 90s go, the PC Engine CD version is clearly the winner, even if it's not the official sanctioned version. In May of 2005, Ys 4, Mask of the Sun, A New Theory came out for the PlayStation 2, once again only in Japan, this time from Taito. I don't think this one has an English patch, sadly. But even being forced to play in Japanese, it's easy to tell that they've modified the story at least somewhat. Overall, it's pretty similar. You get a letter in a bottle like in the Super Famicom original. Control is handed over to you faster in this game than it is in the other two, as you soon find yourself in Promalock. Just talk to some people, get some money, buy some equipment, and off you go. The combat here feels mostly great. You now press a button to swing your weapon, no more bump mechanics. You walk with the D-pad and run with the analog stick. You can equip up to 3 swords at once and cycle through them with the L1 and R1 shoulder buttons. You have 3 attack buttons, fast, mid, and slow, which go from weak to stronger. The X button is the mid attack, and I find that it has the best balance of speed and strength. Like the other versions, you still end up in jail, but Dr. Flare gets you out just as he does in the Super Famicom title. And once again, the bosses are different. Karna still accompanies you here, but she doesn't fight with you. Instead, she just pops out and gives you some Japanese text here and there. Unlike the previous 2 games, you can't save anywhere you want, only in places like fields where you can heal by standing still. The graphics are now all polygonal with sprites used for the characters. It all moves at 60 frames per second, but you're restricted to 480i. The music is excellent. Not as good as the PC Engine CD game, but certainly much better than the Super Famicom. There's spoken dialogue here, but it's nowhere near as epic as the PC Engine game. Just portraits that fade in and out and no animated scenes. It's too bad that this one was never translated and released in English for Western markets. Taito did a great job with this one. I would have enjoyed it back in its time. In 2012, Falcom totally remade Ys 4 and called it Ys, Memories of Celceta. It was first released on the Vita, but later came to the PC, PlayStation 4, and Switch. This is the PS4 version here. Aside from some resolution and frame rate differences, they're all pretty much identical, though the Switch version has an option for newly arranged music. This is the first time that Falcom made a version of the game themselves. If you care about canon, then this supersedes all other versions. The story shares many of the same characters and locations, though most everything has changed. Adol now starts with complete amnesia and slowly regains his memories over the course of the game. You do this by touching the blue orbs that are laying around. These are basically memory fragments, which of course are lying around in the middle of the forest and what have you. The combat has once again improved with lots of special abilities, combos, and all of that nonsense. For the past 15 years or so, Falcom has really been in love with the multi-party system. That means up to 2 companions can travel with you. You can switch between them on the fly with the press of a button, and each has their own specialty. The other 2 will fight with you and defeat enemies on their own. The good news is that they all share in the experience and gold, unlike the Dawn of Ys, though you do level up independently. And yes, Karna eventually joins you as well, and she's one of the playable characters. And here she is again from the Tree Village. You run around insanely large maps defeating monsters and plants. Seriously, you absolutely hate plants. As you're running along, your partner will sometimes go out of their way just to beat the ever-living hell out of a plant. That's right, you're punching and stabbing plants. They have no rights in this world, and they deserve the beating that they get. Back in town, you can of course talk to people and buy weapons, armor, and things of that nature. The game works well and it's extremely fun, but the maps are so huge and the progression is very, very slow compared to the other versions of the game. That makes this one feel repetitive to a fault. It's well over twice as long than the other versions, and that's if you're rushing. The graphics are really good, but not for their time. That's just how Falcom has been ever since, well, forever. But really, they're fine. The music is once again the same melodies, just with new arrangements. They sound excellent, of course, but they don't quite meet the PC Engine CD's level of quality. At least not in my opinion. After all, it's pretty hard to compete with Ryo Yominitsu. There have been a few new tunes composed for this version as well. So overall, these are 4 entirely different games, and if you're a fan of the series, it's worth going through all 4. I mean, you don't have anything better to do you? But if it were up to me and I had to choose only one, I'd personally choose the PC Engine CD version. It lets me visit areas from the first game again midway, and the control and music are incredible, and the cutscenes are unmatched. For the worst version, I'm going to go with the Super Famicom, but there's still plenty to enjoy there.
Leave it to me. Let's go.
And there you go, more games have finally been compared to themselves. What a world we live in. So what are some other games that you'd like to see compared? And if at all possible, I'd like to avoid direct Sega and Nintendo comparisons because that's console wars' territory. Console wars is... Anyway, I don't want them to beat me up, so let me know. In the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack. Hey guys, let's play some cool video games. First game we're gonna try is Sonic the Hedgehog. Everyone loves Sonic. Oh man, this game sucks. Sonic, more like moronic. Okay, next we're gonna try Thunder Force 4, one of the best shooters in the world. Man, I don't like this one. Thunder Force 4, more like Thunder Force Bore. Alright, let's try a sports game. Let's try Pebble Beach Golf Links. I hear this is supposed to be pretty good.
Think you can get it inside mine?
Pebble Beach Golf Links? More like Pebble Beach Golf Stinks. Okay, let's try a different sports game. Tommy Lasorda Baseball. How can this not be good? Right! Right! Oh, come on! Right! Oh man, this sucks! Tommy Lasorda Baseball, more like Turdy Lasnorda Lame Ball. Okay, back to shooters. Let's try Musha. This one gets a lot of acclaim. Oh, yeah. Oh, man, what a piece of crap game. Musha, more like Pusha. Okay, let's try Shadow Dancer next. It's a ninja game. Ah, what a piece of crap. Shadow Dancer, more like Shadow Cancer. Okay, let's go back to shooters with Battle Garega, which was only released in Japan. Oh, I knew this game would suck. Battle Garega, more like Battle Gun Smegma. Okay, let's try one last game. Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. Hey, now this is a pretty good game. I like this. Oh, Castle of Illusion, more like Hassle of Confusion.